morning, Smarties. Today we're going to be doing a little experiment. We're going to be making a mini water cycle in a bag that you can observe and see the water cycle happening each day. What you're going to need for this experiment is a bag. I used a quart-size bag, but you could use maybe a sandwich bag, or you can even go big with like a gallon-size bag. But it has to be able to close up here at the top. You're also going to need a permanent marker so that you can mark on your bag. You're going to need a piece of tape. It doesn't matter what kind of tape as long as it's strong enough to hold the bag up. And then you're going to need at least a cup of water. Now I'm using about a cup of water so that I can fill my bag up about to this line, which is about a fourth of the bag's space inside. Now if you're using a smaller bag, you might want to use maybe 3/4 cup, maybe something that's a little smaller. But choose the amount of water that fills you up your bag about a fourth of the way up. That way your bag is not too heavy when you do the experiment. Now, before you put anything in the bag, I highly suggest that you use your permanent marker to write the different steps of the water cycle. If you've forgotten the different steps of the water cycle, you can check out the video on BrainPop Jr. called The Water Cycle. It will review these different steps, or you can keep watching my video now and I'll tell you about the different steps. Ready? So the water cycle, it can start at any point in time, but normally the part that we see the most is down here. We see water all over the place. We see it when we turn on the faucets of a sink. We see it after it rains and there's puddles on the ground. We see it along the James River and seeing along Ty River and seeing along Rockfish River. We see water all over the place. And so this is probably the part that we see the most. Now, the water cycle, when water becomes hot and the air around it becomes hot, there's a process called evaporation that slowly takes water away and brings it up into the air. Now, this is a pretty hard thing to see. The reason being is because water, since it's clear, when it starts to evaporate, it's hard to see it. Now, one time when you can see it is if you have a really hot boiling pot of water on the stove and you see steam come up. That is evaporation, and that's really, really hot water. Now, the evaporation process makes the water condense, 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 condense until we get to condensation. Condensation is when there's so much water in the air that starts to kind of attract and get closer to each other. It wants to kind of be friends with each other again and start to form back into water. This is where we see clouds. Now, clouds is another thing we see a lot around the world. We see it up in the sky most days, if not almost every day. Whether it's raining or it's a bright blue sky, there's normally at least a couple clouds that we do see. That is where water is condensing and coming really close together, kind of hugging on to all of its friends. Now, when a bunch of those friends all come together up in the clouds, there's not a lot of space that the water can sit on top of. It just is using the air around it to hold it up. And so when it gets too heavy, that's when it starts to fall back down to earth. This is called precipitation. This is what we see rain come down. We also see snow. If it's hailing, where there's ice coming down from the sky, that's also precipitation. All of those are based on water. And when it comes back down to the earth, it just joins right back in with our big group of water. So that's the water cycle. So when you're doing your experiment, I highly suggest that you write down these words, evaporation, condensation, and precipitation, on your bag, just so you can see what is happening. Now, I drew a little water area to help remind me I need to fill up the bag to about that high, as well as to see how the water is going to move in the bag. The way we're going to do this experiment, after you set up your bag and you've poured your water into the bag, you're going to seal it up. Use some pieces of tape. Tape the top and use this and tape it to a window. Windows I highly suggest you tape it to a window that gets a lot of sunlight. Now you might need to use more than one piece of tape depending on how big your bag is, but go ahead and tape it to a nice bright window that you see lots of sun coming in through every day. And as the days pass, even probably as just today passes, you might notice something happening inside of your bag. Now, please keep your bag up today, tomorrow, and into the weekend because I'm going to be asking you questions about it next week as well. I hope you guys enjoy our little experiment, and I can't wait to see your results. Bye!